Hey everyone, it's Rob Ryder, April 10th, 2012. I'm going to talk about, I sent out a couple of emails the last couple of days about redeeming your property. One was one way in Florida and the other one is away here in Michigan. And I've gotten a lot of responses that I think people are kind of confused on what a mortgage is. So we're going to start there and then look at a few other things. So what is a mortgage? This is out of Bouvier's. I kind of moved it around the way I like it. Number 8, it says, an equitable mortgage of lands is one where the mortgagor does not convey regularly the land, but does some act by which he manifests his determination to bind the same for the security of a debt he owes. All right? So it doesn't convey the land regularly, but it's going to be some act that you do that manifests your determination that you want to do this. You want to bind the same for security of a debt he owes. Well, how would you do that? Well, first, you'd write on a piece of paper. So an agreement in writing to transfer an estate as a security for the repayment of a sum of money borrowed, or even the deposit of title deeds and a verbal agreement, will have the same effect of creating an equitable mortgage. So it doesn't have to have any money involved whatsoever. Simply by allowing the title deeds to be deposited and a verbal agreement, doesn't have to be written, says verbal, gives the effect of creating an equitable mortgage. You need to understand that the words register, file, deposit, they mean the same thing. They all come to end up being a deposit. And anytime you deposit something, according to this, a deed of any kind of writing, any kind of agreement, to transfer an estate, and there's many different things that can be called an estate. We'll look at those shortly. Your all caps is an estate. You're putting it down as security on a deed of trust. And then you're also putting down a piece of real estate, which is what you believe is the house, the land that the house sits on. So it doesn't really matter if you own the house or not. You're going to put it down as a security on a title deed until you satisfy a mortgage. Well, but it says in this mortgage that it doesn't have to have anything to do with money. Simply by you allowing paperwork to be deposited creates an equitable mortgage with the person that you deposited with. So now they have an equitable mortgage, which means legal title. But in Pennsylvania, no such thing as an equitable mortgage. Well, go figure. Such an agreement will be carried into execution in equity against the mortgagor, against you, or anyone claiming under you, him, with notice, either actual or constructive of such a deposit having been made. So, you're at the closing table and you're getting ready to leave and say, well, we're going to file this for you. We're going to register this. We're going to deposit this, whatever this is, paper, your securities. By allowing them to do that, you just gave them an equitable mortgage, legal title over that property, whatever on the paper. And so when you look at your deed of trust, part of it's going to be your all capital letter name estate, and then also the real estate. As the money borrowed on a mortgage is seldom paid on the day appointed, that's called the law day, mortgages have now become entirely subject to the Court of Chancery, merely because if you didn't fulfill the obligation of the mortgage by the law day, well, you owe a debt. You owe a debt to society to go and take care of that. Where it is established rule that a mortgage holds the estate merely as a pledge or security for the repayment of his money. Therefore, a mortgage is considered an equity as a personal estate. Okay? So even in the Court of Chancery, it is established rule that the mortgagee holds the estate merely as a pledge or security for the repayment of his money. Well, again, they didn't lend you any money. They never signed the deed of trust, the mortgage, security agreements. The banks never signed anything. Therefore, you never had a contract. There wasn't a meeting of the minds. But you let them put the piece of paper in a drawer with your other securities, which would be your promissory note, and all the payments you're making into an escrow account are really just securities for you to satisfy the mortgage. And when you satisfy the mortgage, you're going to get the security back. The mortgager, that would be you, is held to be the real owner of the land, the debt being considered the principal. It's got an interesting definition. That it's not P-E-L or P-L-E, it's P-A-L. And the land, the accessory. Whenever the debt is discharged, the interest of the mortgagee in the lands determines, of course, and he is looked upon in equity as a trustee for the mortgagor. So once you take care of the discharge the mortgage, the mortgagee, the bank, becomes your trustee. Now they owe you a debt. So here's some different definitions of debt. So according to civilians, this would be civil law, which is in Court of Chancery, the canon law, statute law. It's all civil law. It's not common law. It's inferior law. Debts are divided into active and passive. By the former, it's meant due to us. By the later, what we owe. Well, look at that. They're using the same word to say somebody could owe you something at the same time as you could owe somebody else something. So what is the debt when they talk about the debt? Is it what they owe you? Debt and remedies, the name of an action used for recovery of debt, that name, and the number of, though damages are generally awarded for the detention of the debt. These are, however, in most instances, merely nominal, being such in name only. So it's a debt in name only. It isn't really a debt. They're just using the word debt. Well, or a debt could be an obligation owed by one party, the debtor, to a second party. And an obligation is a requirement to take some course of action, whether legal or moral. Well, could it really be this simple then? They didn't lend us any money, but it has been deposited, and therefore, once it was deposited, that's what created the mortgage, and now the mortgage that's been created has to have the conditions to satisfy the mortgage. And maybe we're not ever seeing what those conditions are. It's not that they don't exist. They may just be in a different file than your property record. So, this is Cornell University, Equitable Mortgage by Deposit of Title Deeds. Let's see what they had to tell us. It's only a little 3-pager. So an equitable mortgage by deposit title deeds, the doctrine that an equitable mortgage on land is created by the mere deposit of a title deed as security, arose in England late in the 18th century and has survived in the face of much hostile criticism and narrow limitation. Not used for much, hostile for some reason before, but adopted since. Now I can see why it'd be hostile before. I didn't realize this yesterday. I was watching some movie on YouTube that until 1930, Blackstone's Commentaries in English Law was the law books used by all attorneys. It was the law. Blackstone's Commentaries in English Law was used in America from its foundation until 1930, around 1930, whenever they developed case law. Case law did not exist before 1930. They used Blackstone's Commentaries in English Law in American courts. It might be worth knowing and mentioning that to whomever you're talking to. So, the rule that any written instrument, too incomplete or informal to be enforced as a mortgage at law, would be held in equity to impose a lien on the land. Well, look at that. So a lien now we bring in the word lien. In equity, it's a lien. But the written instrument is too incomplete and informal to be enforced as a mortgage at law. It's unlawful. It's not due form of law. It's color of law. So, enforce such a lien where the agreement was evidenced only by the deposit as a security of the title deed to the land for whatever that was. So that's the only time Chancery enforces it. Such a lien where agreement is evidenced only by the deposit as security of the title deed. So is it deposited? Yeah. Well, then guess what? There's a lien. In this country, however, the delivery of deeds does not figure so prominently when real estate is transferred. And although a few state courts have openly adopted the English doctrine, majority have refused to recognize it. Such a mortgage, however, is not necessarily repugnant to the spirit of the Recordings Act. It is only when enforcement of such an equitable mortgage would result in the subordination of a person, that would be you, who had relied on the record title, that's what we do, without notice of an outstanding lien, that the mortgage would conflict with the spirit of the Recording Act. So that's why they give you notice. They may call it summonses and so forth, but they're giving you public notice. They're going to try to enforce this equitable mortgage and subordinate your person. But a far greater difficulty is presented by the statute of frauds. Indeed, Chancery soon admitted that this new doctrine was irreconcilable with the statutes. Well, guess what? They're saying it's unlawful. It may be color law. If they can get your consent, they can do it, but it certainly isn't lawful. And if you point out the error in the law, equity will follow the law. The written instrument is enough to take these cases out of. Okay, so I think the title you're talking about is when you recorded the warranty deed, grant deed, whatever it is, for the land itself. All right. That may actually be a deposit also, and I don't really want to get into that because I want to focus on the deed of trust or the mortgage so that you can get your security back, clear the mortgage, and any abilities for anybody to foreclose on your house. It's really quite simple. But you need to understand what the mortgage is. If they didn't lend you any money, then you shouldn't be afraid of the mortgage. You just want to go satisfy the mortgage and see what the damn piece of paper says. But we've not seen it because they don't put everything in the same file, as I'll show you shortly. The written instrument is enough to take these cases out. Okay, so if you have a separate writing, then you're going to satisfy the statute of frauds, and I'm going to say that's a deed of trust. The fact that deeds had been deposited seems to have been less important in these cases than the fact that the intent to mortgage was evidenced by some writing. Okay, so the fact that it's been deposited didn't mean anything. The fact that the intent of the mortgage was evidenced by some writing. So now you've wrote a piece of paper talking about giving them a mortgage on which you put up your estate for security, which is your all capital letter name, and that escrow account, so all those payments are going in as only a security or a pledge to take care of the mortgage, which has nothing to do with money because they didn't lend you any. So possible to sustain the decision solely upon the more general ground that equity will enforce a mortgage as a mortgage, a written instrument which happens to be insufficient at the law. Well, look at that. Generally, equity will enforce as a mortgage a written instrument which happens to be insufficient at law. It's not in due form of law, yet equity will sustain it unless you do something. If you don't point out the defect in the law, then they're going to say you agree. Instrument deposit as security is a written instrument to convey land and not a title deed in the true sense of the words. Okay? So it's not a title deed, it's an instrument to convey land. Well, you grant and convey land on the deed of trust or the mortgage. Go read it. But it is interesting to note that one court has carried its repudiation of this English doctrine so far as to refuse to recognize any equitable mortgage where deeds had been deposited, even though the transaction was fortified by a writing and notice had been given to the adverse claimant. Oh, that's interesting. So what does number 23 say? So at least one court has said that all they're really doing is putting a mortgage on, refuse to recognize any equitable mortgage where deeds have been deposited, even though the transaction was fortified by writing notice had been given to the adverse claimant. Okay, so at least one court said, well, it doesn't matter if you did that. And that would have been here at Gardner versus McClure, 1861, 6 Minnesota 250. In this case, it is suggested that the deposit of deeds creates a lien upon the paper of the deed itself. That's all it is. It's just a lien on the piece of paper, not on the real estate. Okay. So, anyways, that's what deposit of title deeds is, right? It creates this equitable mortgage, and we need to get rid of the fucking mortgage, whatever that takes. Oh, so the word principal. In commercial law, principal is a person, legal or natural, who authorizes an agent to act to create one or more legal relationships with a third party. This branch of law is called agency and relies on its common law position. He who acts through another acts personally. Well, when your body was registered, or land is registered, if you don't want to say it's your body, in Michigan, you could register and name your farm, and a farm is an estate. And when you registered it, you became the registered owner, and you had rights and it wasn't rights, title, and interest. It was rights and privileges. Rights and privileges. So you know, if you had allodium, you'd have rights, title, and interest. Well, now you just have rights and privileges. And then when you did this, you picked up a tenant, an agent, and an employee, I think it is. So here's the agent they may be talking about. An estate, this word has several meanings. It, in most extensive sense, applies to signify everything which riches or fortune may consist and includes personal and real property. Hence we say personal estate. And that would be personal property. Real estate would be real property. All caps, your all caps is an estate. It's your ponderosa. It contains all your personal property, all the accounts. Everything with your all capital letter name on it and an account is just part of your personal property. It represents smaller estates carved from the larger. So a drop of your blood on a piece of paper, done at birth, created a ponderosa. It has your soil. It meets the definition of being a living document and having soil. It's got your essence on it, your spirit. Actually, they may be saying that's your soul, and they've locked it in hell, which is an office below the office of the exchequer where all the king's debtors are kept. You know, all caps shows up first in your birth documents, and only you can get a copy of these. Well, they must be because they are your property. Nobody else can get a copy. If it wasn't your property, what would be the big deal? It's the only property of yours they really guard in the world. And so what's escrow? Well, it's an arrangement made by contractual provision between transacting parties whereby an independent trusted third party receives and disperses money and or documents for the transacting parties. Okay, well, yeah, sounds like we got a deed of trust here. Well, who are we going to trust? Who's the third party who's going to hold the paper? It goes on to say, you know, you can read this, but until the consummation or termination of the transaction. So either the deal's done or it gets terminated. Well, we want to terminate the mortgage. We don't want it to be consummated. We want to terminate it. All right, so really, with that little bit, knowing what a mortgage really is, it's merely the deposit of papers and a verbal agreement that it didn't take any money for this mortgage to be created, and the mortgage isn't the money you're giving them, that's the security, and the security is only theirs until you satisfy the mortgage that they didn't lend you any money on, which means it must be something they're giving them money. So we need to go see what the criteria are to satisfy the mortgage. Well, in the state of Michigan, the State Housing Development Authority Act of 1966, Act 346, 1966, Chapter 2. This doesn't cover all the different ways to redeem a mortgage. I'm going to show you one simple one, right? Bringing an amount due into court before judgment of sale, dismissal of complaint. So whenever a complaint is filed for the satisfaction or foreclosure, the complaint is filed that you either come satisfy the mortgage or they're going to foreclose on the mortgage. Okay? That's your choices. Either or. We tend to go ahead and let it foreclose. Why don't we go satisfy it? Well, everybody says, well, how are you going to pay it? Well, they didn't lend you any frickin' money. Well, that isn't what it shows in my file. Well, guess what? You're not seeing the complete record. Let's find out where the rest is. Upon which there is due any interest or any portion or installment of the principal, and there are other portions of installments to become due subsequently, the complaint shall be dismissed upon the defendant bringing it into court at any time before the judgment of sale, the principal and interest due, with cost. So it sounds like, to me, if they've filed the paperwork, deposited it, right? Because that when they file, that means so when they made the deposit, we were talking about on this other one, where it said that, oh shit, it's on this one here, where it says equity will, the Court of Chancery will get involved when it's been deposited. Where was that at? Yeah. Okay, the fact that deeds have been deposited seems to have been less important than writing sustained. Where did it talk about the Court of Chancery? Of course, it was on the front page. Chancery to enforce such a lien where agreement is evidenced only by deposit security title deeds to the lands. Even though it's too incomplete to be due form of law. Okay, so the main thing is, if you have a summons for foreclosure, go to court, go to the clerk of the court, and tell her that you would like to satisfy the mortgage. Now, this is for Michigan, right? And she has on file the paperwork it's going to take to do that. So she better show it all to you. Now, it doesn't say what court clerk, right? I don't know if it means the district court, if it means the circuit court. Now, I'm going to say it's the circuit court for this reason, because this is all determined, equitable mortgages, because that's what this is, it's just an equitable mortgage, are determined in the Court of Chancery. And in the state of Michigan, the clerk of the circuit court is also the Register of Chancery. So you can go there before the judgment of sale. Anytime before the judgment of sale, you can go to the court and do this. You're going to ask them, tell them you want to redeem the mortgage, satisfy the mortgage. Okay, but then there's a deed of sale, execution, operation, right, title, interest, vested in grantee, recordation, redemption of premises. The person making the sale, that'd be like a sheriff sale, tax sale, things like that, they shall execute deeds, shall, must, they will execute deeds, specifying the names of the parties in the action. The date of the land contract mortgage held by the authority, when and where it was recorded, a description of the premise sold, and the amount of which the parcel of land described on the deed was sold, and shall endorse on the backside upon each deed the time it becomes operative if the premise is not redeemed according to the law. Well, the law is common law, lawfully. How do you redeem it? So unless the premise or any parcel of them are redeemed within the time limit, redemption of the deed becomes operative as to the parcels not redeemed, and shall vest in the grantee named on the deed, or his or her heirs or assigns all rights, title, and interest which the mortgager had at the time of execution of the mortgage, or at any time thereafter. So they're saying you have the rights, title, and interest right now if you just pay the mortgage, but since you didn't, you're going to let them have it. And the information is going to be on this sheriff's deed. Okay, so the deed of sale as soon as practicable and within 20 days. So, and within 20 days. So I guess until then it could be with the sheriff, the tax man, or whoever did the sale. Within 20 days after the sale shall be deposited, not recorded, it shall be deposited with the register of deeds of the county in which the land described in the deed of sale is situated, and the register shall endorse upon the deed the time it was received, and shall record the deed at length in a book provided for his or her office for that purpose. So this isn't the same book as everything else. This is a different book. Now the interesting thing is, in which the land described in the deed of sale is situated. Well, guess what? If you're not in your birth county, some of your land is situated there, in my opinion. The land never left the county, and that piece of paper with a drop of blood is still in your birth county, so I wonder if they're getting a copy of this. So nevertheless, but there is other land on there described in the deed, and that land is, on the deed of trust, is when you put down as collateral, right, the house, that land. Okay? So, and shall index. To me, that's a Reader's Digest version. The deed in the regular index of deeds. So when you go to the regular index of deeds, you're going to see it been indexed, whatever that means. It means like an extract to me, or what it is not the frickin' deed. They're just telling you that a deed exists. And the fee of recording the deed shall be included with the other costs and expenses allowed by law. The premise of or any parcel of them are redeemed. The register of deeds. So if you come to redeem it, the register of deeds shall write on the face of the record the word redeemed, and shall write what date the entry was made, and sign the entry with his or her official signature under her seal. So the important thing is, this sales deed is going to be deposited someplace, not recorded with the register of deeds, in a book other than the regular index of deeds. The entire deed is someplace else. That's what you need to find. Okay, so what if you do redeem it, though? Redemption of premise, effective deed of sale, affidavit. So you or your heirs, lawfully claiming under the mortgage, the mortgagors, heirs, executors, so forth, may redeem the entire premise sold by paying within 6 months of the date of the sale to the purchaser or purchaser's executors, their people, or to the register of deeds in whose office the deed of sale is deposited. So you can just pay it to the register of deeds as provided in the court rules for the benefit of the purchaser, the sum which was bid with interest from the date of sale at the interest rate provided by the mortgage. Okay? So, for the sum which was bid with interest from the date of sale at the interest rate provided by the mortgage. So not the deed of trust number, what's on the mortgage. The vendee of a land contract, vendee's heirs and their people, lawfully claiming under the vendee's land contract or vendee's heirs, keep going, entire premises sold in the 6 months from the date of sale by paying the purchaser, in whose, register of deeds, in whose office the deed of sale is deposited, as provided by court rules, and benefit the purchaser, so forth. In this case, the sum paid to the register of deeds, the sum of $5 shall, in this case, the sum is paid to the register of deeds. The sum of $5 shall be paid to the register of deeds as a fee for the care and custody of the redemption money. Okay? So, if you're the vendee of a land contract or a mortgagor of a mortgage, you can go redeem it from the register of deeds in her office within 6 months of the date of sale. Upon payment of sums required under this section, the deed of sale is void. If a distinct lot or parcel separately sold is redeemed, leaving a portion to the premise unredeemed, then the deed of sale is void only as to the portion or portions of the premises which are redeemed. The register of deeds shall not determine the amount necessary for redemption. Okay. So if some of it's against your personal estate, which is tied to your all capital letter name, there actually may be something happening at your birth county that's happening where the land is, because you could possibly only redeem a portion. Well, that could be the real estate of your house. I want the security back. So we're really going to want to read these close when we get a copy, and we're going to find out how. The purchaser shall attach an affidavit with the deed to be recorded that states the exact amount required to redeem the property, including any daily per diem amounts, and the date by which the property must be redeemed shall be stated in the certificate of sale. Okay? So there's a thing called the sheriff's deed, or whatever that deed is, and to that the purchaser is going to attach an affidavit. He's doing something lawful here, under penalty of perjury, with the deed to be recorded that states the exact amount required. Now, to be recorded, it has not been recorded yet. Again, it's been filed or deposited in the Register of Deeds office and indexed in the regular book, but not put in the regular book. You need to go find the other book. The purchaser may, and may means must in law, include in the affidavit the name of the designee responsible on behalf of the purchaser to assist the person in redeeming the property and computing the exact amount required to redeem the property. So in this affidavit, it has to tell you what you need to do it, and who's supposed to help you. The designee may charge a fee as stated in the affidavit, and may be authorized by the purchaser to receive redemption funds. The purchaser shall accept the amounts computed by the designee. So I think they're talking about the designee is going to be the Register of Deeds, because it said earlier you can pay the Register of Deeds, and now this is saying that whoever the purchaser is has given authority to somebody else to do it for you. The amount stated in any affidavits recorded under this section shall be the amount necessary to satisfy the requirements for redemption under this section. So it isn't what the fucking deed says anywhere. It's what's on the affidavit, and we're not seeing the damn affidavit. We need to go find this other file that's in her office. Okay, and this is just a link that will take you to, actually I'll probably pull it up before I finish, this section of the Michigan real estate legislature where I'm pulling this stuff off of. My point is, they may use different words in different states. They're all going to have the same process because they're all deeds of trust. Deeds of trust, they never lent you anything because deeds of trust, mortgages, security devices, whatever they want to call it, they've never acknowledged it, so they never lent you any money. And, you know, right here it says the deed of sale as soon as practicable within 20 days. So before that, it sounds like you'd go see the sheriff. He's got it. Or if it was tax sale, well, the tax man has it. But within 20 days, it shall be deposited, but not recorded with the Register of Deeds of the county in which the land described in the deed of sale is situated. And the register shall endorse the back, endorse means the back, upon the deed the time it was received, and shall record the deed at length in a book to be provided in his or her office for that purpose. It's not the same book as normal. They got lots of different books. And anytime they put a file stamp on something, they're just telling you they're endorsing the back of the document, what's on the other side. But whenever they do this, they shall index the deed in the regular index of deeds. So if you went to the regular index of deeds, it should tell you where these other ones are. Now, if you go to do this, hopefully you meet an angel the first time and they just tell us what to do, right? But you may not. You may find one that's still got the devil in them, and you're going to have to shake it out of them. And so this clearly says that this is being done according to law. For them to hinder you from doing this would not be allowing you due process of law. And for an officer of the government to not allow due process of law is unlawful. And to do an unlawful act as an officer is treason. You would just need to put in a criminal complaint against the office that they are not allowing you to do due form of law. Attach these as your evidence that this is why you came. You're not allowed to do it. That the information is being concealed. That's a big, big, big deal. You don't do it as a civil case. It's a criminal case. It's a criminal complaint. You're not writing a court case. You're making a frickin' complaint. So keep it simple. They simply aren't following the law. 125.1448G says this, and they're not allowing me to do it. Anybody gets in your way, boom. Brother, either you change your mind and be a witness to me claiming my property, or be a defendant on a criminal complaint, penal code, common law criminal. I will not be looking for money damages. I'm charging for fraud, misprision of treason, and it isn't worth it to you. And see how they answer that. Okay? It's that frickin' simple. All right? Know what a mortgage is. Know that it doesn't have to have any money. Just the deposit of the damn deed and a verbal agreement made the mortgage. Go get rid of the mortgage. Now, what I'm showing you here is, when it's already in trouble. You don't need to wait for it to be foreclosed, right? You can go satisfy the mortgage at any time because it has no money involved. Just go find the mortgage. And I sent out an email on the statutes of Florida because it was what I thought was really easy to read the other day that says how to do that. Right? This one we're looking at here is after it's already, they're already foreclosing. And until somebody actually goes down and makes them produce the piece of paper with the attached affidavit, you're not going to have the whole story, what's going on. And as soon as they give that to you, it's going to say what you need to do to redeem the mortgage. And you're going to walk out of there, mortgage redeemed, getting rid of the deed of trust, giving them the legal title to sell your property, and releasing your securities back to you. All the money you put in escrow, all that it's made, it was only a security to pay the mortgage. But they didn't lend you any money. You just need to go satisfy the frickin' mortgage. And if that means you have to tap your heels 3 times because it says so, well, that's what you'll do. And, there's no place like home. Okay, I'm going to leave it there. You'll